Chimerica by Lucy Kirkwood. The main character is an American photojournalist named Joe Schofield. So Joe Schofield is the main character, and he represents some of these photojournalists who took pictures of the tank man during the Tiananmen Square protest. But the author says he is not actually a fictionalized version of any of them, but he's a new character. He's a fictional character, but he was a photojournalist who took this photo, one of these photos. The actual photo we are showing here is by Jeff Widener, but the idea, and I'm showing you this particular photo because it was used for the promotional stills of this play, and the cover image which I had shown you earlier also has this picture by Jeff Widener. So Joe Schofield is an American photojournalist, and the play Chimerica is about his quest several years later to find the man whose identity is unknown and who's known only as the Tank Man. So the play switches between two timelines. One is 1989, when the events of the Tiananmen Square protest are happening, and the other is the time when the present time, which is basically 2012. And this is around, it is also set not just in 2012, but very specifically in and around New York, in the context of the presidential election between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. So Barack Obama's second term, that particular election that happened in 2012, that is the background in which the present timeline of the play is presented. And the play itself was written in 2013. It was written and produced in 2013. So the first, and the play has, it is a 5-act play. So it is almost just like in the traditional structures of the 5-act play. This play also has 5 acts, and each act has some 7 or 8 scenes. So there are a lot of scenes and very short scenes. Many of the scenes are very short, and that gives a very rapid pace to the play. So there are these 2 timelines, and this is basically what is happening in the play. And in the first scene is just a picture of this image. It is just projected. The Act 1, Scene 1 is basically the same picture of the Tank Man that is projected, and we are given, the audience is given some time to connect with this picture. And then Scene 2, Act 1, Scene 2 is again a kind of prologue. It is set in 1989 in a hotel room in Beijing, overlooking the Tiananmen Square, where Joe Schofield is just 19 years old, and he was there to cover the Tiananmen Square protest, and he gets a phone call from his editor, Frank. Okay, so Joe, Frank, they are all part of a New York newspaper. The name of the newspaper is not mentioned. And Frank is calling Joe to ask him whether he is okay, because he knows that Joe is very young and he is covering this this protest that turned out to be extremely violent. And he knows that all Western or international media persons are being sent out of the country. They're being expelled from the country by the Chinese authorities. So they are talking on the phone, and Frank is trying to comfort Joe and tell him that, okay, I am trying to get you out of there very safely. But Joe he's also very young. He's just 19, and he's very much influenced. He's very emotional after watching the massacre happen. So from his hotel room, he was able to watch it. So it was a 6th floor window or something. And from there, he was able to watch the massacre happening. And he realizes that the students who were killed by the Chinese army were 18, 19-year-old young people just like him, boys and girls who were occupying the square, and he is moved by their resistance. He is inspired by them, and he's also extremely disturbed by the fact that the Chinese authorities have killed them. And while they're having this conversation, suddenly Joe moves to the window as if he has seen something, and while still talking to Frank, he says, I have found something. And what he sees basically is the image of the tank man, this man standing in front of the tanks, and the tanks trying to maneuver around him. And we don't see that happening. But we hear Joe describing the scene to Frank. And while describing it, he's on the phone, but he's also taking photographs of this incident. But as soon as that is over, while he's still on the phone, there are people banging at the door. The Chinese soldiers are banging at the door and trying to get him to open it. So what Joe does is he takes out the film roll and he puts it in a plastic bag and he hides it inside the cistern of the toilet, inside the flush tank of the toilet. And then he puts in a new roll of film and he takes a lot of random pictures of of the room, and then he is immediately taken by the authorities, by the soldiers. And that is where the prologue ends, or that is where the second scene ends. And then from there we are now catapulted into 2012, when Joe is a senior photojournalist. He's 42 years old, and he is traveling from New York to Beijing, along with his colleague Mel, Mel. And he and Mel, Joe and Mel are now going in 2012. He is going to Beijing to find out what happened to the tank man. So he tells this entire story, whatever happened in 1989, which we have already seen. He tells Mel about this, and we get to understand from their conversation that they are going to find this man. And Joe is very worked up about it. He's very enthusiastic about it, and we can see that the same enthusiasm is not shared by Mel, or later we understand Frank, or any of the other people who work with Joe. Joe is kind of obsessed with finding this man, and he keeps talking about it. And we also realize from his conversation then and later to other people that after this incident, Joe has traveled around the world. He has been to war-torn areas like Palestine, Iraq, many places, and he has taken a lot of photographs in very dangerous circumstances. And he thinks of himself as a highly political person, as somebody, a very progressive person who is doing a very important job by revealing the truth about many things that are not usually revealed in media, or that people don't normally know about. So he is, in some sense, he's very proud of his role as a photojournalist, reporting war and civil wars and hunger and famine and all kinds of issues. Now, while they are on the plane to Beijing, they meet a young British woman named Tessa Kendrick, who they start talking to Tessa. Tessa is afraid of flying, so when the plane is taking off, she gets very scared and she starts to shiver, and Joe holds her hand and helps her. And while they have a conversation, they get to know what each other know each other. Actually a market research consultant. So she is going to China as the market research consultant for an American company, and she wants to understand the Chinese market. She wants to understand Chinese consumers and understand their consumer patterns, their behaviors, etc., so that American companies can gain a foothold in China. And Tessa is an example of, so just like Joe is a certain kind of archetypal figure of this political journalist who's also extremely proud of his activities, a Western political journalist, we should keep that in mind, a male Western political journalist who does all these dangerous things, important photographs, who's arrogant about the fact that he thinks that he is the only one who is doing any worthwhile work in the world. Tessa, on the other hand, thinks that her own work is also journalism, whereas Joe thinks that he works against, and they have a slowly over the course of the play, Tessa and Joe keep meeting at different places in Beijing, in New York, etc., and they slowly get close. But at the same time, they have a very confrontational relationship where Tessa thinks that Joe is being too holier than thou. She thinks that he's being very arrogant and he doesn't respect her. He thinks of her as just somebody who has sold her soul to capitalism. On the other hand, Joe is also very confrontational with Tessa because the kind of things that she's interested in, the kind of things that she talks about, the way she sees everything in terms of, market research and consumer patterns and all, that is something that Joe just cannot accept. But slowly they develop a certain kind of intimacy which began from the first meeting where Joe actually helped Tessa to get over her fear of flying, and slowly a relationship, kind of friendship develops between them, which later becomes a romantic and a sexual relationship. But this relationship, they care for each other and they support each other, but it is still haunted by the fact that they are completely different kinds of people with completely different ideological perspectives, etc. Now, when Joe goes to Beijing, now I'm not going scene by scene or act by act, but I will just tell the general summary. When Joe goes to Beijing, he meets an old friend of his named Zhang Lin. Zhang Lin. Who lives very close, who also has a brother named Zhang Wei. So Zhang Lin and Zhang Wei are two important Chinese characters living in Beijing. And Zhang Lin is an English professor, English teacher, and he is a good friend of Joe. And he is Joe's contact in Beijing, and Joe wants Zhang Lin to help him find the tank man. But Zhang Lin is, he seems very disillusioned about the whole prospect. He doesn't think it is possible to find tank man. He says most probably he's been killed, or he's not a hero like you think. He was just some random person who must have just ended up there. What are you going to do finding him? Why are you searching for him? And he tries to dissuade Joe from going ahead with this search. In between, but Joe is, again, he's very passionate about this subject, and he talks to Zhang Lin and asks, why are you talking like this? This is a part of your country's history, and why are you not interested in, and all that. So from his relationship with both Zhang Lin and with Tess, we get to see that Joe is very arrogant, in the sense that even though he's right in the sense that he's talking about all the correct political issues, but still he thinks that he is the only person who's whose perspective is correct. So he tries to, even though Zhang Lin is a Chinese man and he claims that he is somebody who lived through the Tiananmen Square protest. He himself was a young student at that time, and he says he also occupied the square during that time. And he says, I am somebody who has actually experienced this. You sat in your hotel room and you saw something and you thought you understood something about China, but I am somebody, I am part of this, I am part of the movement, the student movement that actually protested and faced the violence from the state. But still he seems to, so that is even though they are friends, there is still a kind of point of conflict between Zhang Lin and Joe. So Joe wants to find the tank man, but Zhang Lin says that it is just impossible. First of all, he may be dead, he may not be alive still. Secondly, he may just be a random person, he may not be a hero like you thought. And thirdly, it is very difficult to find anything about this man in China. It is a huge country, there is all this censorship, and the entire mechanism of the state goes into trying to pretend that this massacre never happened. So how are you going to find this person? But still Joe persists, and finally Zhang Lin gives him a hint that this man is probably alive, and he has left China, and he is probably now living in New York. And using this lead, this clue, Joe decides to go back to New York and search for this man. But even that is a very difficult proposition for him, because there are so many Chinese people in New York. He doesn't know anything about this man. He doesn't know the man's name or any other details about him. But he decides to go and find out about this man. Meanwhile, Zhang Lin's brother, Zhang Wei, keeps coming to visit him, and Zhang Wei doesn't really speak English. So he also meets Joe, and Zhang Lin have a conversation in Mandarin. Joe understands a little bit of Mandarin, but he's not very fluent in that. And Zhang Wei is not fluent in English as well. So they have conversations and they keep meeting every now and then, Zhang Lin and Zhang Wei. And we get the sense that Zhang Wei is very protective of Zhang Lin, but at the same time, he thinks that his brother is not living life in the proper way. He thinks that his brother is lost in the past, in his past as a student activist as part of the Tiananmen protest. And also we slowly discover that Zhang Lin was actually married to a young woman named Liu Li, and they were both part of the protest. And slowly over the course of the play, we get to realize that Zhang Lin and Liu Li were very young. They were recently married, and Liu Li was also pregnant at the time that they were taking place in the protest. But in the current moment, Liu Li is not part of the story, and we keep seeing Liu Li as part of Zhang Lin's memories. So we realize that she is probably dead, and from the context, we can understand that she died as part of this massacre. So that part we only realize towards the end. But Liu Li keeps coming as part of Zhang Lin's memories and Zhang Lin's dreams. So now the rest of the 1989 timeline we see through the eyes of Zhang Lin, because after sending Joe away, Zhang Lin, even though he told Joe to forget all about this, to forget the past, to forget the tank man and all, still we realize that Zhang Lin is still thinking about his past. About the Tiananmen Square protest, and he keeps taking his laptop and recording something. And what he's recording is what we are seeing as part of the past timeline set in 1989. We see Zhang Lin and Liu Li meeting, where actually he on a refrigerator showroom. He buys a fridge and comes, and apparently she smuggles herself and then over the 2 months that they spend protesting in Tiananmen Square, they are both together, Liu Li and Zhang Lin are together, and all this is revealed to us slowly through Zhang Lin's memories, which he is recording as some kind of oral testimony to himself. So he's not telling Joe about any of those things, but he's recording all this in his laptop. So this we get to see interspersed through the present timeline, where Joe in 2012 is searching for the tank man. And Zhang Wei, that is Zhang Lin's brother, had told Joe that Zhang Wei's son, that is Zhang Lin's nephew, a boy named Benny, is in New York. He has just completed his graduation from Harvard University. And when Zhang Wei gets to know that Joe is from New York, he says, "You please go and meet my son Benny. Please that their generation, Zhang Lin and Zhang Wei's generation, is unable to make any kind of changes in their lives, because they are in China, where there is this authoritarian rule and they cannot do anything to break out of that. But the only hope that they have is young people like Benny, who are able to escape and go to America and probably get a better life there." So Zhang Wei wants Joe to meet Benny, and Benny says that he will do that, but Benny forgets. So many times he's supposed to call up Benny, sorry, not Benny, Joe is supposed to call up Benny, but Joe keeps forgetting. Joe is supposed to meet Benny, but he keeps forgetting. So this also gives us certain ideas about Joe, which is that even though he thinks that he's a very political person and he is driven and passionate about finding the tank man, he is not a very empathetic person. So he doesn't care much about actual people's problems, and he is not very sympathetic towards them. That is why even though Zhang Wei asks him several times and Zhang Lin asks him several times to meet Benny, still he keeps postponing it, because he doesn't think it is very important. He doesn't think their personal issues are very important. And this continues, and Joe keeps trying to find the tank man. And meanwhile, in Zhang Lin's apartment, something is happening, that there is a lot of smog in Beijing because of the industrial policies, because of inefficient pollution control mechanisms, etc., by the Chinese government, as a result of which people cannot walk around in Beijing without wearing face masks. And there is an old woman who is the neighbor of Zhang Lin, and she's not very old, she's only in her late 50s, but she starts to have a lung problem because of the smog in the city. And we don't see her much, but we keep hearing her coughing in the house, in the apartment next to Zhang Lin. So whenever we see Zhang Lin in his apartment, either talking to his brother or to Joe or recording his memories in the computer, we can hear this old lady coughing in the adjacent room because she has been uh, poisoned uh, by the pollution and the fog of the smog of the city. And this lady's name is Ming Sholi. Ming Sholi. So now Zhang Lin is very concerned about his neighbor, and he thinks it is very wrong that people have to suffer like this because of the corruption and the inefficiency of the Chinese government. And he tries to protest against this, but there's nothing he can do. So he calls up Joe and he asks him whether Joe can do a story, because he is writing for a New York newspaper. He asks, see, this is a problem, my neighbor is suffering like this because of the systemic problems of Chinese government. Can you help us by doing a story about this? And Joe says, listen, this is just one person's problem, and it is happening all the way there in China. It is not a very important story for my newspaper. And again, we can say that through this, we can see that Joe is not very empathetic. He wants Zhang Lin to help him, but at the same time, he's not ready to help Zhang Lin either on a personal level by helping his nephew Benny, or even on the level of helping to expose certain very serious things that are happening in China, because he thinks that that is not a story, it is not newsworthy. So anyway, that continues, and then finally, by the end of the story, Ming Sholi dies, and because of this lung poisoning. Anyway, all that is happening, and now Joe is searching for the tank man in New York, and he also meets Tessa. He gets into a relationship with Tessa. All this is happening, and slowly, what happens is that Frank, that is Joe's boss, editor at the newspaper, tells him that he has to stop following the story, and Joe is asking him why this happens, but Frank says that, see, it is all very well for you to be passionate about this, but first of all, it's a difficult thing for you to do, and moreover, the issue is that our newspaper has a parent company, because now newspapers are usually run by corporations. So our parent company wants to make certain investments in China. They want to start certain businesses in China. And if we run this story, that will be against the Chinese government, and they will not give us permission to make investments in China. They will not give our parent company permission to make these investments in China. So this is again an example of what we mentioned in the beginning as the concept of Chimerica, the intertwined economy of China and America. So even though China is supposed to be the authoritarian country where censorship is practiced, and America is supposed to be a democratic country where there is freedom of press and other kinds of freedom of expression and all these other things, still the American press is telling its journalists not to run the story, not to pursue the story of the tank man, because now American press is completely run by capitalist companies who are economically invested in China, and therefore they cannot risk any kind of political confrontation with the Chinese authorities. So this is one example, one important example of the concept of chimerica. Then another example that we see is that after Joe refuses to run the story about the smog poisoning in Beijing, Zhang Lin writes the story himself and he posts it on a website. He uses something called an anonymizer, which will not allow the government to trace the article back to him, but still the government is able to trace it, and the government realizes that there is a social networking site. There is an American company which runs the site on which the article was published, and they put pressure on this American company. So this is almost like we can think about Google or Facebook or those kind of real life companies and how they function. This particular company, the fictional company, is called Mitel. Mitel is a kind of it's a US company, and it has an office in Beijing. It's a computer system company, and we get to see that the CEO of this company, somebody called Peter Rourke, he's not an important character. He's just a very he's there in only one scene, but we get to see that the CEO of this company is working in his office in Silicon Valley when he is called to ask permission by the Chinese authorities to give the information about the IP address from which this particular article is written. And again, there is no reason for a US company to reveal the details, the personal details of its customers to the Chinese authorities. And the CEO knows, Rourke knows, that the Chinese authorities are going to use this for in order to suppress that man, maybe imprison him or torture him or do anything like that. But still he gives that, because if he doesn't give that, give such details, then his company will not be allowed to operate in China. So we can see through these two examples, there are other examples as well, but especially through these two examples, we can see how American companies are completely economically dependent on China, how their, the prospects of these American companies are completely connected to China, and how there is no way for them to even refuse the demands of the Chinese authorities. Okay, so all this is happening on the one hand, and then as a result of his identity being revealed, his IP address being revealed, Zhang Lin is caught by the Chinese authorities, and they torture him a lot. They beat him up, and finally they don't kill him, they let him go. And however, he is extremely weakened by being tortured by the authorities, and his brother Jiang Wei comes and tries to help him, and he shouts at him and says, haven't you had enough? Why are you doing all these things? You did all this in your youth, that is true, and you lost your wife because of that, but why are you still doing this? Why are you still talking about these problems? Why can't you just keep quiet like the rest of us? And Zhang Lin has no answer to give that, except to say that this is wrong. What is happening in China is wrong, and somebody has to make a stand, and nobody else seems to be helping him. So he has no option but to make a stand himself. And that continues. And after this moment, Zhang Lin is always under surveillance, and security cameras appear in front of his apartment. The government starts watching him, where he goes, whom he interacts with, whom does he talk to on the phone, etc. So now Joe keeps calling him in between to try and find out more details about the tank man, but each time Zhang Lin does not reveal to Joe what has happened to him. But still, we can see, the audience can see, that Zhang Lin is being put under more and more surveillance, and he's unable to talk even properly to Joe over the phone, because even his phone calls are tapped, and there are people always watching him, even sometimes by coming into his apartment. So that is how Zhang Lin's story goes. And again, Joe has been searching for this man, and slowly he gets to know from Zhang Lin that there is a man who, what Joe does is that he tries to find out, he finds out that From a stripper named Maria, he finds out that two advertisements were placed in a Beijing newspaper from New York. And these advertisements, they were put in the personal advertisement column, but the advertisements actually mention 64, which, as I mentioned, is a code for the Tiananmen Square massacre of June 4th, 1989. And so one advertisement mentions 64, and the second advertisement mentions the unsung hero of the time, the unsung hero of the square. And he is sure that this is talking about the tank man, who is probably an unknown and unsung hero. And he tries to find out who put this advertisement, and finally he finds out that it was put by a Chinese lady. He goes and meets that lady who is working in a fish stall in New York, and he tries to talk to her, but she doesn't reveal much. She initially thinks that he's a policeman, but finally he understands that there is somebody named Jimmy Wang. So he comes to know that some person named Jimmy Wang is the person who has put these advertisements, and this lady had actually helped him do that. Now Jimmy Wang, he is not sure whether it's a real name or a fake name, but this is the only thing that he has to investigate with. And then he continues to investigate, and then there is a Democrat senator who is supposed to become part of Obama's cabinet if Obama becomes the president. And she is also somebody who, one second. Sorry, the stripper is not Maria, the stripper is Mary, and Maria is the Democrat senator. Okay, so Maria Dubik is a Democrat senator, and Joe gets to know that Maria probably knows something about this person named Jimmy Wang, and he tries to get the information from Maria, but Maria says, no, I cannot do that. Okay, he finds out that Jimmy Wang had contributed some money to the election fund in 2008 when Hillary Clinton was one of the contestants. So he tries to get the information from Maria, but Maria says, I cannot give out information about people who have contributed to our party. But Joe tries to blackmail Maria by saying that he knows certain things from her past, from the time that she was a student. He has photos of her using drugs, and he says that he will use it and make sure that she doesn't gain the position under Obama that she is hoping for. And she is very upset about that. So she helps him by sending her assistant to give him the whereabouts of this person named Jimmy Wang. But at the same time, she's very angry, and she complains to Frank about how this man is behaving, how Joe is behaving. And Frank kicks Joe out of the newspaper. So Joe loses his job as well. Frank says, first of all, I told you not to follow the story, but still you're following it on your own. And secondly, you went and harassed the Democratic senator, and she complained about you, so we have to now kick you out. And he loses his. And still, Joe is very upset. And around this time, we can also see that the relationship between Joe and Tess is also worsening. Even though they care for each other, they are in love, they're even staying together sometimes, but still their relationship also worsens, and Tess also decides to leave Joe. And finally, Joe goes and he gets to find this person called Jimmy Wang, who he realizes his real name, Jimmy Wang's real name is Wang Pengfei. So there are two brothers, Wang Pengfei and Wang Pengxi. And Wang Pengfei, he cannot find him anymore, but Wang Pengxi is the person who is supposed to be Jimmy Wang, and he is living in New York. He runs a flower shop, and Joe goes there and tries to find out about the tank man, about the unsung hero, about the advertisement that was put in the newspaper. But Wang Pengxi and his wife are very scared. They think that Joe is a policeman, and they are afraid that they will get into trouble because they are undocumented immigrants. They are illegal immigrants living in America. So they had just escaped from China and they are living in America. If they are discovered by the police, they will be deported back to China where their life will be in danger. But Joe is very adamant. He wants to find out about the tank man, and he creates a lot of fuss. He beats up Wang Pengsi, and all these things happen. And finally, Wang Pengsi reveals to him that the person in the photograph is his brother Wang Pengfei. But we get to realize that Wang Pengfei was not the tank man, the man standing in front of the tank as Joe expected, but rather Wang Pengfei was the Chinese soldier who was inside the tank. He was the person driving the tank, and Wang Pengxi thought that his brother is the unsung hero because instead of killing this tank man, the man who was standing in front of the tank, Wang Pengfei stopped the tank, and then he did not actually kill this man. So that is why he thinks that the soldier driving the tank, Wang Pengfei, was the correct hero, was the unsung hero of the time. And Wang Pengxi reveals that his brother was later killed by the Chinese authorities because they did not like the fact that he stopped the tank. So there was nothing else he could have done. He could not have actually driven over this man, but still, because of humanitarian concerns, he stopped the tank, and that became a problem for the Chinese authorities, who arrested him and later executed him. Because of this, his brother Wang Pengxi believes that Wang Pengfei, even though he was a soldier, was still an unsung hero. And now Joe is back to square one, and he realizes that it is very difficult for him. He has now lost any hope of finding who the man standing in front of the tank is. And this particular revelation by Wang Pengxi also makes us realize that the idea of heroism is a complex one. One might think that the man standing in front of the tank is the heroic one. This is what requires courage, to stand in front of a tank and say that you cannot pass. If you want to pass, you have to kill me. But we also realize that Wang Pengfei, the soldier, was also equally heroic, because it is much more difficult to be part of the system, to be part of, to be actually a soldier, and your order is to kill everybody there, but still he refused to kill this man. He refused to drive the tank over this man, and as a result of that, he was martyred. He was executed by his own authorities. And this is something, this is a completely different kind of heroism. And that is, again, the nature of heroism. The nature of martyrdom is also something that it's another sub-theme of this play. Finally, however, Joe comes to realize that the actual tank man was none other than his friend, Zhang Lin. So Zhang Lin is a person whom he had approached from the beginning to get the identity of the tank man, and Zhang Lin never wanted to reveal that he himself was the tank man. And this is why, but perhaps it was because of Joe's continuous questions regarding the identity of the tank man that Zhang Lin, his youthful enthusiasm came back to him. And even though he had a very good career as an English teacher in China, he takes a risk, and he gives up all those things. He gives up his entire security, his life, everything, in order to again write articles like the one on the smog, questioning the Chinese authorities. And then finally what he does is that he records all his information, everything about his memories about the Tiananmen Square protest, including the fact that he was a tank man, and he puts it in a pen drive and he sends it secretly to Joe. And how does Joe understand that Zhang Lin was a tank man? Towards the end of the play, Joe who has now, this is now several months later, he has lost his job and he is no longer a photojournalist, but he realizes that he can become part of the establishment. He realizes that he has to work with the corporations, with companies, and he starts to put up his own photographs for sale and exhibitions. And he now becomes, so he was somebody who considered that any kind of cooperation with the structure is a problematic thing. But at the end, we see that he also becomes part of that structure by putting up his photographs for exhibition and for sale. And during his exhibition, he is visited by Benny, that is the nephew of Zhang Lin, whom he was supposed to visit, but he never visited Benny. But Benny comes to his exhibition, and Benny is very excited to see him. He's a very young man, and he talks to, he's just a young student, college student. He has just graduated from Harvard, and he's got a job now. He's very excited about that, and he's talking to uh, Joe, and accidentally he reveals that his father always used to, his father was the one who taught him about the tank man. And he says that this part of history, I was the only person, I was the only child in my class who knew about this part of history, and nobody knew about it because this is censored completely by the Chinese government. I only know about it because my father, Jiang Wei, who was Jiang Lin's brother, my father used to show this photograph to me, and he would always shout at the person. He will look at the photograph and he will shout at the tank man and say, "You stupid dog face, you will get me into trouble." And when he says this was just an accidental conversation, a casual conversation, but Joe has earlier heard Jiang Lin and Jiang Wei having a conversation, and he knows that dog face is the nickname. In China, it is called a milk name. That is a kind of nickname that is given to little children. So dog face is the milk name or the nickname that is given to Jiang Lin. And when he knows that Jiang Wei used to call the tank man dog face, that is when he realizes that his friend Jiang Lin was actually the tank man. And then he realized that he had been trying all his life to find the tank man, and the tank man had been actually so close to him, it was his own friend. Unfortunately, because he refused to help his friend, now his friend is in trouble. And when Joe calls up Jiang Lin to say that, "I understand what you wanted to say, I have now realized that you are the tank man," they are unable to have a conversation because there is a soldier inside Jiang Lin's house, and Jiang Lin says, "I cannot talk to you, there are some network problems, I can't talk to you anymore." And this is basically a code to say that there is somebody here who is surveilling me. And after keeping the phone down, after disconnecting the call, we realize that Jiang Lin is being imprisoned and taken away by the Chinese authorities. And we don't know what is going to happen to him. Maybe he's going to be imprisoned and never heard from again. Maybe he is going to be executed. We don't know what is going to happen to him. But that is the end of the story of Jiang Lin. And finally, after all these months, Joe also meets Tessa. He has a certain kind of reconciliation with Tessa because Tessa had left him because of his obsession, because of the way he talks, and because of their irreconcilable differences. Tessa had left him, and Tess had left him, and then finally they meet again, and he realizes that Tess is now pregnant. But only later does he realize that actually it was his own child, that he was the father of this child. But Tessa never told him that she was pregnant with his child because they had separated by then. And the final scene of the play shows us Jiang Lin when he was very young, and we know that Jiang Lin and his wife Liu Li had participated in the massacre. And in an earlier scene, we see how they get scared when they realize that the tanks and the soldiers are coming towards them. But at the very last scene, we see Jiang Lin on the day after the massacre, that is on June 5th, after the massacre, he's coming to the scene, and he's not wearing a shirt. He is completely... he has a lot of wounds on his body, there is blood on his body, and he meets a nurse who has taken away the body of his wife who was killed in the massacre. So Liu Li was killed in the massacre, and Jiang Lin is coming there. He's not wearing a shirt because he tore his shirt to shreds in order to create bandages for his wife. And now he meets the nurse who had taken away the body, and he wants to see the body of his wife, but the nurse says, "I'm sorry, there is nothing I can do for you. I cannot let you see the body. It has been taken away by the authorities, but I have all her things. I have all her belongings. I have her jewelry, her dress, her shoes, and other things. So I will give you all those things." And then she also takes a white shirt and gives it to him. He doesn't even know whose shirt it is. He wears that shirt because he doesn't have a shirt. And the nurse takes Liu Li's things, her belongings, and now this man has nothing to take them in. So the nurse puts them into grocery bags. and gives them to Jiang Lin. And in the last shot, we can see, on the last scene, we can see Jiang Lin walking, wearing a white shirt and holding these two grocery bags in which the only remaining belongings of his wife, who has been killed in the massacre, are there in the grocery bags. And as he walks, we can see his figure superimposed against the image of the tank man, the photograph of the tank man, and he walks as if he is walking, as if he's part of the photograph, but then he turns and he looks at us, at the audience, and for the first time we can see the actual identity of the tank man. And that is how the play ends, uh, with the revelation that not only was Jiang Lin the tank man, which is something that maybe we could have guessed as we watched the kind of things that he was doing, but also the fact that bags that he was holding actually contained, because nobody knew who he was. Okay, now this is an important thing. From the beginning of the play, people keep speculating about what was in the grocery bags that he was carrying, and a lot of people said that probably he had just been shopping. He had bought groceries for his home, and then while he was coming, he saw the tanks and he came in front of him. And the grocery bags played a great role in making the tank man an everyman figure, somebody who represents the ordinary man standing against the might of the state. Tess, on the other hand, during one presentation that she makes to her company, shows this image, and she says that this, even though this is always shown as an image of protest, we can see this as representing shopping, consumerism, because tank man may be a protester, but he is also somebody who just went grocery shopping, and we can use this image to say that China is actually a land where people like to shop. And these are the different ways in which people try to understand the grocery bags that were carried by the tank man. But only at the end of the play do we realize that, unlike what anybody expected, the grocery bags actually contained the last remaining memorabilia of his dead wife.